Morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
I thought I was on pitch. Were you?
I don't know what I was doing.
Perfect. You'll fit right in. Ryder says the same thing every day. So welcome to What the Hell is Water. I'm Reed Garcia, founder of Helpful for Life.
I'm Danielle Garcia of DanielleMGarcia.com.
That she is. I should probably turn off your Ryder overlay. Let's just for one last time. We'll see here.
Oh, perfect.
Give me your best Ryder impression. Yeah. You look all grumpy or something. That's pretty close. It's pretty close.
I need my close-up.
Oh, you're right. Now give us your weird Ryder. Yeah.
That's just weird me.
Yeah, you're right. That's too cute to be Ryder. But you know what can you do? We don't expect everything. So, good morning, Danielle. How are you doing today?
Good. A little tired.
Yeah, a little tired.
Mm-hmm.
You stay up late last night?
I mean, not too late last night, but it was a long weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I was in Key West for a bachelorette party. So we didn't get a lot of sleep this weekend. And then I waited until the week before I left to book my flights because procrastination and nothing bad enough ever really happens to me to make me change my ways. So had like a overnight layover on the way back.
Nice.
So yeah, long travel day.
Yeah, still catching up then, huh?
Yep.
So, as an outside observer, it seems like both you and your husband Reed have trouble with procrastination.
Yes, and I believe my husband Reed has talked before about how he feels like teachers let him get away with stuff, or like he's very good at talking out of deadlines, as am I, with myself mostly.
Oh, man. Well, if you ever talk to this Reed fellow, tell him that I'd be really curious to know. Oh, you want to get up here too, Lincoln?
Come on, bud.
Come on, get on up. I'd be really curious to know what you and Reed's kids would be like, because I think they're doomed.
Yeah, they won't even know what a deadline means.
I'm slightly scared. They for this Reed fella, we might need to bring in some outside help for you to maybe like a Lincoln's making his exit. He says, no, that's too tight of quarters for me today. Well, cool. So your bachelorette party, how was it?
Good. It was very, very fun. We, let's see. On Thursday, we went out to our one nice meal of the weekend. And then Friday, we did a sunset cruise, which was really fun. They had a live band on board and unlimited margaritas and beer, and the boat captain would just come around with 2 pitchers, and I don't know how he balanced because that boat was definitely rocking at one point. And we walked 13,000 miles, or not 13,000 miles, 13,000 steps every day, just walking everywhere because our Airbnb was right off of the main street. And and then Saturday went to a pool bar that we thought was going to have a cover because there was a DJ, and it's kind of like one of those you kind of post up all day and are there, but there was no cover. And our waitress, she would come and find you wherever in the pool you were. So that was all really fun.
Nice. Yeah. So, Key West is, that's in Florida, right?
Yes, it is at, I guess one of their features is called Mile Zero because it's the very beginning of Highway 1.
Ah.
Yes.
This isn't the Highway 1 I know back in
that's
California.
I meant to look that up because I was like, is there a one that goes all the way up the East Coast too? Or does this one go up Florida and then south, or is it just follow the southern border of the entire United States? How does this work?
Maybe it's just State Highway 1.
I don't know.
Guess we'll never know.
I need to look it up. I never did. I just walked around hungover Mile Zero.
That's a good way to walk around.
We were a little like zombies in the mornings.
I'm guessing, or not I'm guessing, you told me that Key West is an island, huh?
Yes. Well, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. I mean, there's connected by this highway, obviously. You can drive there from the rest of Florida.
Right.
you don't have to take a boat. It's not that kind of island.
Well,
But
you know, I don't have the scientific. I googled it. It is an island city.
Wonderful.
Just for you.
Perfect.
You know, I don't have the scientific reference in front of me, but I think you were with me one time when someone told me about a special type of island. Yeah. There's this type of island where even though it's completely surrounded by water, you know, you can. And you have to take a boat to get to this type of island. There are some special islands that, even though they have no roads, you can somehow magically take a bus back from that island.
Now, as we're saying this, I'm like, okay, so yeah, Key West is an island that you could in theory take a boat to and then drive a bus away from, like
But that one has a bridge.
I know, but maybe Mom thought this island had a bridge.
Oh, you outed her. You outed her.
Oh, this is why I shouldn't be live.
Well, you know, we'll give her the shout out. We're just making a fun reference to one of the cruises that we went on where where we were like, we went on this excursion and it was to an island. And she was like, no, but we took the bus back. And they're like, I don't know, might be the tequila talking. The worm might have got you.
I thought it was when we were on the island and she's like, oh, when do we get on the bus to go back?
I don't know. Regardless.
I think we were definitely drunk because we like laughed pretty hard.
To be honest, like, I don't even know if this excursion ever happened, but we're going to pretend that this happened because the thing is once a mom or mother-in-law says something wrong, you can't let them live it down for the rest of their lives. It's just too much fun. So for those of you who aren't aware, we haven't mentioned it yet. Danielle and I are married, even despite our little silly act at the beginning, as if we didn't know each other or whatnot. But yeah, and we've been married now for, 8 years. So it'll be 9 years in May, which means in July we'll have been together 14 years.
Yeah.
So there's just a little extra background for you guys. So, any other tidbits from your trip that you'd like to share, or is that pretty much it?
Maybe just that Key West is like a small town on vacation. We talked to a bartender on Wednesday night, and he told us, he was like, you can kind of tell how the weekend's going to be based on who starts showing up on Wednesday, Thursday, and then you just have this like group of people that you run around with and see at every bar you go to. So
yeah, well, that's
like,
fun. Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic when you have the whole, being largely a tourist town. It's got other stuff going on too for it, but it seems like that's one of its main, at least for the restaurants and bars. Yeah. That seems to be the main thing that funds it. And that's an interesting thing about it is how literally it turns over every weekend. It would be such an interesting thing, and I could see that being a lot of.
It would be fun to be a bartender there.
Yeah, a lot of good stories for sure.
Yeah.
And I could see it being a good thing. I could also see it being a bad thing. You're just like, oh, when you get one of those short straw weekends where you get like a whole bunch of bad groups, you're like, oh no.
Yeah. Or you meet a creeper on the first night and then you just see them every night after that. Which thankfully didn't happen to us.
But. Oh, good. Glad to hear that. Well, cool. Well, so yesterday, we were talking about the importance of writing. And reader, my name being Reed and Ryder's name being Ryder, we kind of had this realization after we'd done this for a little while. It's like, hey, reader and writer, read and write. And so we did an episode a while back on reading and kind of talked about what that was like in our lives and kind of the importance of it and why we think it's valuable, things like that. Mm-hmm. And then yesterday we talked about the importance of writing. And we started to talk about it, but we realized that we needed a little bit more time to talk about it because we also spent some time yesterday. We spent a little time at the beginning kind of just, catching up and talking about Ryder and his trip to New York and how that went. And then when he was telling us about New York, he mentioned a museum he went to. And he started to get into a little bit of his museum curator mind and started to let us in on a little bit of that. And so I was like, oh, well, let's talk about that. I think is worth talking about. So we talked a little bit about what it's like for Ryder, who's curated over 100 exhibits, and was an art professor and is an artist himself, what it's like for him when he is, one, going to design an exhibit, and two, what it's like for him when he's going to an exhibit. Like, what does he think about? What are all the factors he thinks about? And we talked a little bit about, do you want the art piece to be by itself, or is it in tandem with some other pieces that are kind of connected, telling some type of story? And he talked about now that we're getting into the higher tech art where it's involving sound and video and things like that. Other factors come into play, like, I'm sitting here looking at this one painting, but there's something called sound bleed, which is a fancy way of saying I can hear that speaker from over there, and it's this crazy woman yelling, and it's kind of taken away from my peaceful experience with this, beautiful lake landscape or whatnot. And so, yeah, we talked a little bit about that art museum and curating and what that was like. And so that was just a little dip into that. I think we're going to talk about it some more, because it's kind of like, hey, Ryder, we know you've done this for years and years and years, and you thought about this for decades, and that you're really old. Sorry, that just slipped out. But tell us, in about 5 minutes, what you think about when you go through museums. So it was cool to get just a little peek at that, and I think we're going to talk a little bit more. Did you have any thoughts on the museums or the curating? Things like
well, it actually made me think of that museum that we went to in, maybe it was Connecticut, but it was like this collective of artists that put on the museum. It was like the Mattress Factory or something.
Oh, right.
Right. And there was actually I don't know if you'd call it an installation or if it was just a singular art piece, but literally what the art was I guess it was more about the user experience kind of thing. Like, we walked up this ramp into this pitch black room, and then there were 2 chairs on either side of the doorway. One chair on either side of the doorway, and then literally you would just sit there and stare into the blackness for however long you wanted to remain there. And it was like you were trying to get your eyes to adjust to the darkness, and it was like a big deal to not walk in there with your cell phone out or any sort of light source. And you would start seeing, at least I started to see these like colored swirls, to the point where I thought that there was a light coming from somewhere projecting onto a dark screen that you just like couldn't see until your eyes adjusted enough. But then we talked to them on the way out, and they said, no, there's nothing. It's just black. So like, yeah. That was one of the, I guess, exhibits that made me
think.
Yeah.
Feel.
Yeah. It was nice.
Yeah. I just shared the link in the chat, and it is called the Mattress Factory. It's mattress.org. I actually erroneously, which is a fancy way of saying I messed up and actually accidentally posted a link to themattressfactory.com, which is literally a mattress factory, I believe. But
shout out to mattressfactory.com.
free ads ever since that museum opened.
Sponsor us.
Right. So that's a museum, and it is in Pittsburgh, actually, is where it is. Pittsburgh, that honestly was a nice, pleasant surprise for me when we went to Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I was expecting. I guess I didn't really know anything about Pittsburgh other than the Stellars, which is, I guess, how they say the Steelers. I mean, Steelers. The Stellars.
Don't argue with it.
I know. And I think that's because they used to have like a steel factory up there. And it was actually it was really pretty up there. I mean, I remember when we pulled up into that, we were like, dang, why did no one ever tell us Pennsylvania was so pretty?
Yeah.
I guess
like the most gorgeous Walmart we stayed at was also in Pennsylvania. I think that was after Pittsburgh. We went north towards New York. Maybe that was when we were heading to Buffalo, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pennsylvania as a whole was gorgeous.
Yeah, Pennsylvania was really pretty. So if you guys have not been to Pennsylvania, I'll tell you now, it's very pretty. You should go out there. There are a lot of trees. There's a lot of hills and rivers and things like that. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that Pittsburgh was one of the, especially for like a highly populated city, it was one of the top ones, like geographic beauty-wise.
Yeah, like going down the main like street in the city where we went to that I don't know if it was like full Czechoslovakian deli, but that's why we wanted to go there, because my Grammy is Czechoslovakian, and we wanted to get some food that some like recipes that she makes for us. And So we were walking through the city after we parked, and it's like in the middle of a valley. And so there are, I don't know, like, I wouldn't call them like cliff faces, but forested hills.
Yeah. So it's a bunch of hills, and
Yeah.
there's like 2 rivers going through town.
Mhm.
And because of that, there's like all these cool bridges. And the way that the hills go down to the river and stuff like that, it's basically like, you know, wherever you are downtown, you're probably not too far from seeing a nice like wooded hill and some nice peaceful water and stuff like that, and then a whole bunch of angry Steelers fans. Actually, we didn't see any angry Steelers fans, but we saw plenty of Steelers paraphernalia, and we did go to that Czech place, which was good. I remember that, and we had I'm gonna mess up the name, but it's like cabbage wrapped around some stuff in the middle. I wanted to say kafta, but I think that's Indian.
That's wrong.
No.
Halupki.
Halupki.
At least that's what Grammy calls that.
Yeah, halupki, also known as stuffed cabbage. Halupki. I'll link all recipes that just came up on Google. I have not vetted it or looked at it, but in case you're curious, it looks roughly right. And it's basically a piece of cabbage wrapped around some stuffing. And when I say stuffing, I think they change what that is. Could be beef, pork, various things like that. This particular recipe mentions Russian, Ukrainian, so maybe it's just kind of an Eastern European thing that kind of varies. Base it is something. Yeah, it has rice in the middle, and then it's got a sauce on top. This one has a sweet tomato sauce on it. I don't remember specifically the.
Grammy did tomato sauce as well.
Okay, cool. Pittsburgh was very pretty. It also had this mattress factory, which was a fun little art exhibit, and it had a couple of other cool exhibits too. But that dark one was interesting. It was like, walk into this room, you can't see anything, and it's like, be careful, but you'll find this, and then you go there. And I think it was also there they had the mirror room with the various things, and it was like had that infinity mirror effect, which was fun and cool. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think it was like a small exhibit compared that was by the same artist who later did a bigger one down at the museum in LA. I don't know if you and I ever got to go to that, but this isn't ringing any bells for you, so we'll move past that one. But that was one I know some of our friends went to in LA, and you had to like get tickets in advance, and I was like, we got a little taste at the mattress factory, you know?
Yeah.
But there was also the Andy Warhol Museum, which we didn't get to go to while we were there, but I figured I'd point it out because evidently Pittsburgh has some sort of art scene. Ryder's not here to either defend it or poo-poo on it, so we'll have to hear from him. So Ryder is he's out for the rest of the week, so we're going to be joined likely by Danielle here for the rest of the week. And one of the things we're going to do is, which we did a little on a previous episode, we started to talk about our travels, and we talked about our RV journeys. And some of that is just talking about where we were going, rewind. The first time we talked about it, we focused a lot on the beginning of our journey and how we got into the RV, what it was like, what we were thinking about, a little bit about the different types of RVs, how we made that decision of both the RV to get into the RV, where we were going to go, how much planning we did or didn't do, seeing as we're both big procrastinators. And then the next thing that we're going to do later this week is we're going to start showing some pictures, and we're going to start actually going, we haven't decided for sure, but probably chronologically along our path, where we talk about, okay, here's where we were and here's where we went next. And we talk about some of the stories that came up, some of the things that we did in the cities. And that's a big spot where we'd love to get plugged in with you guys, the audience. And that live is great. So if you're able to join us live for that episode, that would be amazing, especially if you're near one of the places or if you visited one of the places we've been to, because we'd love to hear what you guys have been to and what you guys have seen, and tell us what we missed, and tell us what we need to go back for, and agree or disagree with our opinions on things. And maybe you can tell us, I've lived in Pittsburgh all my life, it's miserable. Whatever you guys want to say, we'd love to hear it. So make sure to keep your eyes out for that. That'll be probably either tomorrow or Friday. And Danielle and I are going to do a little bit of pre-work to be able to show you guys some of the pictures that we've taken, because we took a lot, or at least I took a lot. And so we'll be kind of sorting through some of them to get a little bit better way for you guys to view them live. So that will be one that you might want to watch via video. All right, so we gave a little recap of yesterday, and then we talked a little bit about Pittsburgh because that the Mattress Factory Museum made you think of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then now I just wanted to talk about our challenge from yesterday. Our challenge was for people to start doing some sort of writing, and we suggested that journaling would be a great place to start. And as one of the suggestions for people to do, we pointed people to your journaling challenge on daniellemgarcia.com. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that journaling challenge and why you made it, and then what it is?
Yeah, so I wanted to start a journaling challenge because I really feel like journaling is a form of writing that can be beneficial to every single person. There's when I got back into journaling, it was in 2016 with bullet journaling, and starting to talk about the research on how handwriting activates a different part of our brain. And I feel like it's a habit that I definitely don't do every day because I don't really do anything consistently every single day. But when I took
Wake up.
Oh yeah, that's true. Eat food, drink water, basics. But yeah, when I took the pressure away from journaling and was like, I'm just going to do this as a habit when I want to. And then now, I have so many notebooks filled that I wouldn't have otherwise. And it's really, really interesting to go back and see stories that I told in my diaries that I totally forgot had happened if I hadn't written them down, or just times I was thinking, or like stream of consciousness kind of writing just about what I was thinking about and seeing like, oh wow, I don't think that way anymore. And I think I like what I've come to believe better, and just doing a lot of intentional self-reflection. So my journaling challenge will it has a different prompt for each day, and you can write about the prompt. You can write about why you don't want to write about the prompt. You can just use it as a prompt for you to sit down and journal however you want to journal. But we'll be kind of like exploring a couple of different journaling techniques. So one of the prompts is going to be spend today doing interstitial journaling, which is like what we do in Rome Research sort of thing, where just in between your work tasks throughout the day, you always have your Rome notebook open in a window, and you just write like 4 p.m., just finished this meeting and thought it went blah, 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 and then move on to the next thing. So
yeah. Real quick, just to point out that fancy word, interstitial. Danielle actually, when she grew up in McKinney as well. She was also part of what's called the Gifted and Talented program, which I was a part of as well. And as part of our schooling, we learned the STEM words, which I've mentioned 1 or 2 times in the past, which are the small pieces of the word that make up bigger words. And basically through memorization, you memorize what all of these stems are. And then by doing that, it helps you discover what other words mean and get kind of some gleaning or some sort of gleaning of the meaning. And it's one of those things that I don't remember exactly how I felt about it back in the day. I'm sure we did a little bit begrudgingly, like, oh, another thing we got to do. But honestly, that's one of my favorite things that I learned because now I've used it for the rest of my life. And it's also been extremely useful when you have really long, complicated sounding words and you just like sit there with your eyes like, what does that mean? So applying STEM words today, we have interstitial. And so the I-N-T-E-R, that means between. And then stitial is referring to time, I believe. Or maybe it doesn't. I don't know.
I don't remember that one.
I don't remember that one either. But
a stitch in time.
A stitch in time, yeah. But stitch maybe, I don't know what it means. But like stitch like sewing or whatever. But the point is it's meant in this fillers. Yeah, in this case, it's like the time in between, right? The stillers. Oh, not the fillers. Interstillers. Oh, that movie with Matthew McConaughey. Interstellar.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that would be an interesting parody movie. But yeah, so interstitial, it's about that time in between. And that's one of the traps and one of the reasons that people are like, I don't have time to journal. I have to do so many things already. Gangle. But one of the analogies or stories that comes to mind is the jar that's, you start out with the jar and you fill it with rocks. And you're like, wow, this is so full. Well, then you put in smaller rocks and you shake it a little bit. And then what fills up the spaces in between? And then you do sand. And you're like, wow, surely this is full now. But then you can still add water. And, I just gave it a really quick and dirty explanation. But that's kind of like what interstitial journaling is. It can be your sand or your water, and it can fill those little spaces in between. And it can be extremely valuable for you. It can help you. I won't get too far into it. Let's get back to the rest of your journal challenge. So you'll be walking through some different types of journaling, including one that's interstitial, which you mentioned we do using room research, but you can certainly do with pen and paper or any other method.
I do it in my handwritten diaries too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So continue on with your journaling challenge.
Oh, no. I mean, that was pretty much it. You can go to daniellemgarcia.com/journal-challenge and just put in your email, and then you'll get a prompt in your email by I haven't decided yet, but by 3 a.m. every morning. So you'll wake up to it.
Nice. And that's Danielle, M as in Mary or Mark or Marie or Moore or, any other things that start with M.
Monkey. As in instant gratification monkey.
Yeah, DanielleMGarcia.com/journal-challenge, journal-challenge. And we put the link to that in the chat so you guys can join. And you'll basically just type in your email address and you'll get the email every morning while you're doing that. And I think it's also important to know, hey, we encourage you guys to try and get this to be, a part of a daily routine and try and do it, once a day or whatever. But if you don't do that, guess what? That's perfectly fine, especially if you're starting from scratch and you've never done anything before. So what? Give yourself a little grace. Maybe you do 2 one day, maybe you do 3 one day, maybe you skip a day and you just pick it up the next day. It's not a big deal. There are no rules. The main point is for you guys to start doing it and start thinking about it and reflecting on it and see if it's something that you think might be good for you. And also really encouraging you to, do the entirety of the challenge. Is it 30 days, 29 days?
29 days.
Yeah, 29 days. And so the point of that is, don't just do it once or twice and then stop, because you're likely going to have some friction. You're probably going to be like, oh, what's the point? But, do the 29 days. And then after that, even then it's I don't know if you have enough to really judge, but it's enough for you to make a somewhat of a meaningful assessment of it and then reflect. So yeah, that's the journal challenge, which we've included the link for. And now we will run the intro and then we'll get back and talk about today's show. Helpful for life. And we're back. Welcome to What the Hell is Water. I'm Reed Garcia, founder of Helpful for Life.
And I'm Danielle Garcia.
Yes, she is. And today we're going to talk a little bit about, let me pull up the nice little things that I wrote here. So for our title today, I said, Danielle is much, much greater than Ryder. Blue hair, writing, Taylor Swift, and witchiness. Oh, I said blue hair, journal challenges, Taylor Swift, saved text messages from high school, a dash of witchiness, and so much more. Danielle is always a fun addition to the show. So that's what I said about you.
Oh, that's a great bio.
Yeah. I was going to just have Danielle be greater than Ryder, but YouTube doesn't like the greater than symbol, so we had to go for the greater than.
Oh.
So, there you go.
There we go.
So we're going to talk a little bit about all those things. And since before this we were talking a little bit about journaling, let's talk just for, a few minutes about what journaling looks like in your life. And, we don't need to get into, yesterday we were talking about the importance of writing, and we don't need to get into a big 30-minute discussion on it. But yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you started journaling and, diaryizing and what's even, why are there 2 terms for that? And then, yeah, maybe a little bit of also, now as a writer today, has that proved valuable in any ways? And do you look back on these things? So yeah, I guess let's start off with when was the first time you started to journal or diary? Diarize.
So I was gonna do the term first, and I actually don't know that diarizing is an official word, but my Grammy, she calls it journalizing, and I want to say she may have given me one of my, if not both of my, like first journals that had the little like lock with just the little key that, you know, didn't really do much of anything, but made you feel like you were locking away your diary. And like a lot of my early diaries that I found in my parents' storage unit was like pictures, just drawing pictures. And so even before I could write words, and then I was like practicing my handwriting in my first diaries. So that was, I guess, my intro to it. Oh, go back. So Grammy calls it journalizing. And then I thought maybe it would be fun to call it diarizing because I like doing it in the morning. And so it's like you are writing in your diary while you are rising for the day. So I actually don't know if I've looked up diarizing as a real term, but that's what I've decided to call it. And at one point I had an acronym where it was like diarize, and then each letter meant like a prompt for waking up in the morning. So like the D was write down your dreams, and I don't remember all of it. It's in my room somewhere, but yeah, so that was diarizing.
Yeah,
and
well,
then,
I like that. I mean,
yeah.
I think that's cool. And the fact that you're, you know, I think that's a really good point about your journaling and your diarizing. And regardless of whether or not it's a term to you.
Yep.
And I really like the fact that it started out with pictures. I think that's kind of cool. And I also would encourage our viewers at home, like, hey, if that's a method that speaks to you guys and you like drawing or doodles or whatnot, you know, go for it. Especially, you know, if it, you know, one thing I personally think is valuable about journaling is tracking kind of how you're feeling. And, you know, maybe that's for you is just picking an emoji. Maybe you just draw a little emoji and it's like happy, sad, angry, confused, whatever. And you could have multiple emojis, and or you could just draw like a little, you know, scribbly picture. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, right? I mean, the main point of this is for you. And, you know, I can't help but think of like some of those movies where they show like the kids in like kindergarten and they're drawing all their pictures, and then there's like some demon child, but they don't know they're a demon yet. And it's like, oh, parent, we have these concerning drawings. And they pull out this portfolio and it's like 20 drawings where it's just like the big black scribbles, and it shows like mommy and daddy like stabbed and blood everywhere. And they're like, these are slightly concerning. And we're like, huh, you waited to, you know, make it a full collection there before you brought one of those up, huh?
Yeah.
You ever seen a movie like that?
Probably. But now I'm thinking of that movie where they adopt the orphan and she's actually like in her 20s.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Anyways.
Sorry for
brain went there.
Sorry for the little bit of tangent there, but you know, that's how this works.
Yep.
So yeah, so you started out with pictures, you know, it's kind of funny, just like writing. I think I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think it started out with these kind of pictorial forms, and I don't know if hieroglyphics was the earliest, but one of the earlier, you know, fact check me on this, people, but that's, you know, pictures of the thing. And then some people may not be aware of this, but if you look at a lot of like Asian languages, the symbol characters, Japanese, Chinese, some of them actually, the symbols themselves are meant to be representations of the things they represent. And I'm not going to be able to show you examples because I don't know those languages well off the top of my head. But for example, maybe it's like, oh, well, that kind of looks like a tree, or, oh, that kind of looks like fire, or, oh, that could be like wind or water, or, you know, flowing and whatnot. And so it's kind of interesting that you yourself evolved in that same kind of way. You started out with pictures, and then, I mean, I guess that's maybe how we learn too as kids growing up. You start out, ooh, apple, and then you start turning into a spoken word and written word. So cool. So that's how journaling got started for you, and you had that lock thing. You know, what are your thoughts on your journal or diary being private versus, you know, now you do kind of a mix of private and public writing, and what are your thoughts on how that's evolved over the years?
That's a good question. I guess when I started out blogging for the public, it was in college. and I had a Tumblr blog where it was like, just take a picture of yourself a day and post it along with a little like couple sentences or paragraph about what you did that day. And that was actually probably my like most consistent, longest blogging effort I ever did. And
when was that?
That was I think junior year of college, because I took a psychology class where we had our assignment was to keep a journal. And I'd kept journals off and on through middle school and high school, but really just like starting a notebook and maybe getting like 5 pages in and then never touching it again. So that blogging effort and that class, because at the end of the class we had to turn in, like we had 1 grade for the entire semester, and it was that we kept a diary.
Interesting.
And that was like the one paper that we graded. And this was also a class where we actually would have like some level of therapy sessions in class. And he did like a group hypnotism where one of our classes was just a meditation where it was a guided visualization of like diving down into this water and people like fell asleep in the class, and that was okay because then he brought us back and it was like, he's like, and now you should feel, and it was an 8 a.m. class. So he's like, now you should feel rested, like you slept through this 8 a.m. class or something. And then, we were all like, oh, wow, like hypnotism is amazing. And so it was just a class where like it exposed you to a bunch of different, I think it was called like psychology of adjustment, and just different psychology tools that you could use to help with life changes and adjustments in your life. And so that was, I guess, my first adult introduction back into journaling, which then I think I actually kept up with that blog until most of the way through senior year of college, and then we got married, and
it was all downhill from there.
I mean,
if there's one thing we've said about Reed, it's that he is a great influence on you.
Yeah, always.
It's like, oh man, you started dating Reed, and then you started to cuss more. Because at one time he said, oh, it was cute that you cussed because you were just such a cute little innocent, sheltered girl. And then you cussed one time, and I was like, oh, that's kind of, cute or sexy or whatever for its novelty at the time. And little did I know, people, that was a mistake. Yeah. Go back to 18 to 20-year-old Reed and tell him, like, don't tell her that, because now she's a sailor.
I know. I feel like I have to think before I talk every time on this show.
But that's I joke a little bit, but one of the things I'm glad that we did that was it got you more comfortable expressing yourself and thinking for yourself and being okay saying things that got people maybe a little upset or angry, and then maybe now you sometimes go a little too far, but hey, don't we all? Yeah,
and I definitely think we could all use a little more fuck it in our lives.
Nice. All right, so
you get one, right?
You get one.
One.
We kind of go for a PG-13 rating on this show, so if you get one, you might as well use it that way.
There you go.
Yeah. That was one of the things when we were thinking about the name. I was like, all right, if we put hell in the name of the show, people probably expect at least one cuss word every now and then, and that's kind of roughly what we do. We like to talk about everything, and words are words, right? And word choice makes a difference. And so maybe when you heard that perked you up, and you're like, whoa, what are they talking about? And now we've got Danielle on the show, and this is why she's much, much greater than Ryder. Well, before we move on from the journaling topic, do you have any other thoughts or tips or anything that you'd like to share about your journaling, or I guess maybe talking a little bit about how sometimes you go back and look on your journals and what that's been like for you, or I guess put it in a sentence. Why is journaling or diarizing valuable for you, and why do you recommend other people do it? You can take your time. Don't worry to rush it. I'm gonna drink some coffee over here.
Okay. Well, I guess I was just thinking if I was trying to summarize it in a neat little phrase, I think it's intentional self-exploration. Because I think we can always know more about ourselves. We are multifaceted beings. So there's always more.
So say it one more time in a full sentence. Start out with journaling or diarizing.
Okay. Diarizing is important for the purpose of intentional self-exploration.
I like that a lot. Intentional self-exploration, people. Because the reality is when is the last time you have done some self-exploration? Because the reality is, in this day and age, especially in this, hyper-connected world where we're always texting and we're on social media and we're always around people all the time, and people at work and family and friends, and there's all these expectations about what you should be or you shouldn't do, or you should do this or you shouldn't say that word, whatever it may be. There's so many things out there telling you how you should be or what you should do. And I think a very important step in everyone's journey should be exploring themselves and thinking about, well, what am I? Who am I? And what do I care about? What do I enjoy? And even if there are some things maybe I've done for a really long time, or maybe my entire life, like maybe I should re-examine those things. Like, do I really enjoy doing those things, or am I just doing that out of habit? For example, like, oh, well, I watch, football every weekend, and that's something that was really important to my dad or my family or whatnot. And so we started doing that all the time. And then the next thing you know is like, oh, we're going to watch all these games. And it's like, oh, is that something that's really important to me? Do I really care about that? Or am I just doing that because other people are? I'm just throwing out an example of something. It's like, oh, I play video games every day after work. Maybe that's something I've been doing for a really long time. And then one day it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be doing that every day, or maybe I like to try some other things, and maybe I'll take away some of that time and put it towards something else. And those are just a couple of examples, just off the top of my head, to maybe help prompt some of you guys for things in your life where it's like, all right, maybe I should do a little bit of self-exploration. So thanks for sharing that. So any last thoughts on journaling before we move on?
Mm-mm.
Well, cool. Well, I know we could talk about journaling and diarizing, honestly, for days and days with you, and I'm sure we will be back to talk with you a little bit more. I do want to talk on a future episode with you, maybe later this week, about the importance of writing outside of just journaling, because I think it would be great to get your perspective on that, especially as someone who is an aspiring professional writer yourself now. And so thank you for sharing with us that journaling for you is a great way for people to explore themselves. So next, let's talk a little bit about this little witchiness thing, and one of the things that I was interested to hear, and I'm glad you told me. I don't know if it's been a while. I'm sure you told me back in college, but I've forgotten about that class you took in back in college. And it's interesting because it sounds like that was through one of your classes you were exposed to kind of some different methods, some different ways of thinking, some different things out there in the world. So when it comes to, now you have a little bit of this interest in tarot and some of the mystical type of things, and I don't know why I used air quotes, but and started to explore some of that in recent years. But what kind of got you interested in that and kind of got you exposed to that? And I don't know, what got you thinking differently or willing to self-explore in that way?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think back to, how I really first started exploring the more like metaphysical arts, or whatever is best to call them. Yeah, I don't know what would be the best term either, but I think, I don't know. I feel like I remember being little, like maybe 7 or 8, and there was a bookstore that my mom and I went into, and there was this like children's spell book, and I was like, ooh, what's that? But I don't think I asked for it because I thought that it would be seen as like evil or devil work. But I always thought
real quick,
it would be...
I just want to, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure to reference, like, grew up in Texas, very strong Christian belief here across everyone. It's not, do you go to church? It's which church do you go to?
Mm-hmm.
So just to provide a little bit of context for our listeners who may not be familiar. So this is the environment that you're growing up in. And so you saw this one, children's spell book, and you started to wonder about that. Go continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, I was always interested in like fantasy books, and magic in books, and I think one of those, well, I feel like I'm going off on a tangent here, but
we welcome tangents.
That's fine. I'm bringing myself back to, I guess, as an adult, where I really started to explore more like spiritual pursuits was when I discovered tarot. And I'd sort of always had it at the back of my mind, like, oh, it would be really cool to be a medium or to be a psychic. Like, I guess I just thought like you had to be born with a gift or have been seeing spirits from the time you were 7 years old in order to explore those sorts of spiritual, metaphysical gifts. And you don't. Like, we all have this gift called intuition. And I think for me, my like meditation exploration and the desire to develop a meditation practice probably comes from wanting to delve deeper into learning about your gut and your intuition, and maybe even developing some like third eye visions or like psychic abilities. So and I think a belief that I had previously was that if you were exploring all of these like witchy, mystical things, that was mutually exclusive to being a Christian who goes to church, that those things couldn't coexist. But I think just through my explorations the last couple of years, you meet a lot more people than you think who are Christian, believe in God, and also believe in their psychic abilities and the metaphysical witchy arts. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it's really important to highlight that, based on where you're raised and where you grow up and where you spend your time, you are inherently going to think things are more likely or less likely. And that kind of goes on any number of things, right? It could be related to food, could be related to business, could be related to family, relationships, all sorts of things. Like, we have these, I want to call them preconceived notions, but the preconceived part is done by society and by the group of all the people around us, right? And one of those preconceived notions in what's called like the West versus the East, in the West is referring to basically like kind of Europe and America, or the Americas rather, whereas the East is referring more to, the Asian continent. And in the East, they are much more open to the idea that there are spirits and ghosts and things like that. Whereas here in America, especially, it's kind of like, what are you talking about? Those don't exist. Ghosts aren't real. Spirits aren't real. And it's like, so for those of you at home who are kind of like clenching up and wondering like, what are you saying? This is blasphemous. Burn. Throw the holy water. So I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that predisposition that you have, just based on where you come from, where you lived, and frankly what you've read about, what you've seen on TV, and all those types of things, right? And of course, having Hollywood and TVs and shows doesn't necessarily help a lot of times with these things, making them seem even like weirder or scarier or whatnot. So I just wanted to make sure to point that out for our audience members at home. So you started to look into this a little bit, started to be more open to things, and yeah, I guess what are your thoughts or answers to somebody who comes to you and says like, no, you're wrong, like burn her at the stake?
Run away, actually. Like, not engage.
Yeah.
That's my...
Uh-oh. You all right, buddy? All right, we're good. Box fell almost on Lincoln.
On him.
Yeah, run away.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a valid response. If someone's coming at you with all that anger and hate and
that's not about me. That's about them.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So as you started to be more open to this and engage more in these things, like how did you do that? What are some of the things that you started to look into, or people to talk to, or whatnot? And yeah, what does that journey look like for you?
Yeah, so I guess with tarot, it actually tied in very well with journaling, because I would basically start learning how to read tarot cards by just pulling a card and then journaling out whatever it made me think of, like using the senses and what do you see in the card, like what what does the card, like the imagery in the card, make you feel? Like what colors or symbols popped out to you, and what did those symbols like mean in your mind, and what past experiences do you have that make you think of that? And then I guess also noticing different synchronicities is probably another like metaphysical woo-woo practice that I've done way before I knew it was like a numerology or a signs from spirit guides sort of like way of communicating with what all else is out there that we don't fully understand. And it's like, if you start asking for signs and paying attention, then like God, the universe, is sending us signs all the time. And for me, that's what the number 29 became. And it would just show up in the craziest of places. Like this, it cannot just be coincidence. Like, so when that was our dating anniversary, and then the number 29 started showing up as like a lucky number for me everywhere. And I got 29 gifts we got 29 gifts at our couples shower. And when I went wedding dress shopping, they put me in dressing room number 29, and I found my dress. And there's just a bunch more. And I found out, so I in college took a psychology of marriage class. And in that class, he decided he didn't want to use our Texas A&M university numbers. He wanted to give us our own ID numbers that were just totally random. Like they weren't in order. He just went out and gave random numbers to each person in the class. And my number was 2916. And I'm born on the 16th. And I found out the house that my parents lived at when I was born, the street number was 2916.
Wow.
So there's just all this like crazy stuff that, you know, I choose to see it as like I've asked for signs that I'm on the right path. Like that for that class, it was we were 20 or 21 and engaged and getting married. And I was like, oh, what do I know about if I should be getting married in this psychology of marriage class with this professor who seems very jaded about the concept of marriage and probably is divorced because he's not wearing a ring. But then come to find out at the end of class, he is married, and he's been married for like a very long time, but he just kind of gave off that vibe to like challenge students. And, you know, so just like asking for signs of like, I'm young and stupid. How the hell do I know what I'm doing? Like, and then, yeah, it was always just like a little God wink. Like, oh yeah, you're exactly where you're meant to be, and you're doing what you're meant to be doing. And like, you can just trust the process. And that's what those little, like whenever I see 29, it's a lot of times it's where I'm like driving somewhere and I was running late and feeling like, oh, should I have left earlier? Should I be like even going to this thing at all? Or like, I'm anxious about going to this thing. And then literally I hadn't noticed any other cars. And then I looked down, and the car that stopped right in front of me, their license plate ends in 29. Like that happens so much. So
yeah. Well, you know, I had something very insightful.
It looked like you did.
I did. And I was like, oh, and then I got distracted by something else. And then it just completely gone, which happens sometimes.
If it's important, it'll come back.
If it's important, it'll come back. So yeah, I guess one of the main things I wanted to point out to our viewers at home is regardless of whether or not you believe these. Oh, I remember what it was. Now I will ask you, Danielle, for our viewers at home, what is a God wink?
Well, now I'm trying to think of the definition where I'm not just, it's a synchronicity. What's a synchronicity?
Definitions with definitions inside. Love it.
Yes.
You can define it that way if you'd like.
I mean, I would say it's a moment, like a moment where you get chills, where like something just feels like an answer to a question that maybe you didn't know you were asking, but then it's like, at the moment that you realize, oh, like I felt like I was seeking something, then felt like you got an answer, maybe. Or like a coincidence that seems just too perfect to be just coincidence.
And the name comes from the fact that it's kind of like
God
is winking at you, like,
yeah, like I got you.
I see you. I got you. We're on the same path, whatever. Okay, so that's an interesting phrase, which I'd heard before, but I want to make sure people who haven't heard it before are aware of this God wink term, right? And one of the things I wanted to point out to our viewers at home was, regardless of whether or not that you believe this, or you think that, oh, it's silly to look for meaning in these types of things, in my opinion, that doesn't matter. It's kind of up to you what you decide to look for and what you see meaning in. And we talk a lot about psychology and various things on this show, and it is worth pointing out, like, when you are looking for something or a certain type of thing, you're more likely to find it. And one example of, once, we never cared or thought about RVs at all, but then once we decided, hey, we're going to get an RV, well, guess what? Now I started noticing how many freaking RVs there are everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I was like, now you see them all the time because your filter has been shifted and now you're looking for those things. Likewise, with the numbers thing, I think that's great, and I'm so glad that you have that, and I think that's a fun little thing that you do, right? And I don't see any harm in, like, if you want to assign meaning to that, and if you want to think that's a positive, good thing, or a sign, or a God wink, or whatever, like, more power to you. Mm-hmm. Me, as a extremely rational, logical, data-backed, science-backed kind of guy, I kind of roll my eyes a little bit. I'm like, oh, well, that's just the so-and-so effect, or whatever psychological explanation it is, and that's the thing about spirituality and religion that it really comes down to is we don't know. We really don't know. And guess what? If we did know and there were definitive answers, it wouldn't be so complicated, and there wouldn't be this discussion. There wouldn't be all this disagreement, right? And it wouldn't be all these various religions. I mean, that's the thing about religion and spirituality is there's always some leap of faith that is required, and we don't know as of right now what exists or what not. And people's quest for spirituality and or religion is just up to them. And it's like, hey, what are you going to decide to believe? And oh, by the way, that's okay for that to change over time and evolve. We could go on and on about this, but I want to make sure we get to a couple of the other things that we brought up. So appreciate you telling us a little bit about your history with kind of exploring spirituality and this whole witchy, mystical type of world. I don't know why I keep using I guess I'm using air quotes because I think the word witch has so many connotations to it, so many of them negative. I'm just trying to kind of soften like the viewer's response to it, to be honest. Because it's like when you hear witch, at least here in America, my first thing that comes to mind is Salem witch trials. And I joked earlier about burning at the stake, which I don't know was the most tactful joke, but go ahead.
I was going to say, this is a great segue into Taylor Swift.
Oh, perfect.
Because she has multiple lyrics about witches, and like they're burning all the witches even if you aren't one. And so my idea for my main character from the novel that I'm writing, she's going to be a modern day witch. And I'll use that lyric at this, like the beginning of one chapter at some point, where Taylor Swift says, "They're burning all the witches even if you aren't one." And so then my character's going to say, and I think it's way more fun to be one. So, yeah.
So I like that. Well, real quick, I mean, I don't know if you've said it on the show before, but what is your book about? And tell people a little bit about the book that you're working on. And obviously it's still in progress, so it's going to change and shift, and who knows what'll happen with it. But as of right now, if you were to, I don't know, read somebody the back cover, what would it say?
Well, it is going to be based on Taylor Swift's Folklore album. The main character will basically be listening to the songs and then journaling about the stories from her life that the songs make her think of. And I guess the themes are like learning secrets about your friends and family as you get older, and just learning more about, like, you don't know what all you don't know until you realize you didn't know it, kind of thing. Like that phenomenon. Yeah. And I guess learning more about yourself based on how you respond to things, secrets that your extended circle is telling you.
Yeah. So, to reframe a little bit based on that, and also some of the things you've told me about it. So you're doing this cool concept where you have this album by Taylor Swift, a musical album for those who aren't familiar with Taylor Swift. I don't know how, but just in case you aren't aware, Taylor Swift is a musical artist, one of, if not the most financially successful ones of all time. And she has an album called Folklore. And so you decided, because you love Taylor Swift, that you love writing. You're like, all right, well, let me just combine these things that I love. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed about Taylor Swift and seeing you and how you react to her words and her music and things like that is, like, you look for all of the meaning in these things, and you not only look for, okay, what was Taylor Swift meaning and for her life, and based off of what you can find out and rumors and all that kind of stuff, like, oh, who's she talking about, what's the situation going on here, you're doing a little bit of that investigative work, if you will, but you're also reflecting and thinking, like, oh, well, what does that song mean for me in my life? And the interesting thing about fiction is that you now get to combine, like, some of Taylor's stuff, some of your stuff, some stuff that you just made up, and you get to have these kind of composite, you get to put together all of these stories, and you get to create your own characters to help people see and think about these types of things. And so you're going to be loosely using the album as a conduit, if you will, to tell this story and to help show, like, oh, well, this song is kind of about this, and here's this chapter of this person's life or whatnot. So yeah, I think it's a really cool concept, and I look forward to seeing it and reading it. Of course, I'm slightly biased, but I think it's a cool concept. And if people want to keep up with that, DanielleMGarcia.com would be a good spot to get updates. And as writing goes, who knows? Maybe this could be a few months from now. Maybe this could be a few years from now. And that's been part of your writing journey, is figuring out exactly what and when all that's going to happen. And again, kind of like journaling, making sure to not make the process force you into a spot you don't want to go. So that's just a smidge about your novel and a little bit about Taylor Swift, which I'm sure we'll have to talk more about another day, because I know, again, we could have a whole week of episodes on Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
But real quick, let's talk a little bit about your blue hair, which is blue now, but it's also been, I think, purple and pink and all these other colors. Like, what made you want to do that? I mean, I guess if I were to look from the outside and look at the simplified timeline of your life, I'm like, okay, this hyper sheltered, real innocent girl grew up in Texas, and as she became into herself and explored and went to college and learned about other things, and then she saw the world, some through her third eye. and then she realized there was an eye growing on her forehead. And then as she got more comfortable with herself and using bad words and exploring spirituality and other areas of life and what she thinks and feels and what she wants to do and what's the purpose of it all, as she's been exploring all of this, she says, you know what, I'm comfortable doing things and getting attention and talking about things publicly more and more now, and now I have pink hair, and deal with it, people. There's my 2-second summary on what you got. But tell us, what's the story behind your hair?
I would see other people with colored hair and be like, that's really pretty. I wish my hair was like that. And now it can be, because I'm never going back to corporate America. If someone wants to try and tell me I can't have tattoos or do my hair how I want or wear whatever I want, then bye. I don't need to work there anyways. So, yeah. And I started dyeing my hair actually when I was still working for the startup in California. So showed up one day, and at that point it was just the bottom half of my strands that I did purple. And it actually faded really quickly, and then I forgot I'd actually dyed my hair going into college that summer in between. It was just like a streak of pink down the back at the bottom. So you couldn't see it if my hair was like 100% down. But
that would have broken dress code.
I mean, I don't know, but
So you basically had really no other big statements or anything like that. It was just like, I think that's pretty, like, and I like it.
Yeah, and I think, like, it makes me happy when I look in the mirror and I see, oh wow, my hair's blue and pretty. Like, that's really it.
Well, even though that's not your intention, was not to make some sort of statement or something like that, I think the novelty of it and the fact that not everybody has colored hair, it does say something about you. And it says that you are comfortable, making that outward expression and not caring as much about what people think. And And that's both good and bad because, you know, the downside of being different and sticking out is everyone wants to comment on it, regardless of if you know them or not, right?
Yeah, which I feel like when I had purple hair, there was a trip we took where I just felt like, yeah, like 7 people had come up to me in one day to talk about how my hair was purple. And I was like, I'm sick of talking about this. I just want to have purple hair for me and not talk to every single random person about it. But now I'm like, you know, if they're saying something about it, like maybe it's because they wish they could have blue hair. Like, so I just feel like, yeah, I'm just more happy to talk about it. And then also I really didn't hate being called the mermaid of the Bachelorette group the whole weekend. So that was fun.
Yeah, well, that's one of the cool things about, you know, whether it's your hair or something you're wearing or an accessory or a tattoo or whatnot, some sort of expression of yourself. I think it's, you know, I've kind of moved away from wearing any logos or things like that because I'm like, I don't really want to make any statements or all that kind of stuff. But that's one thing I definitely have appreciated a little bit more of like, okay, if I'm wearing a shirt, say for example, from my college or something like that, I will intentionally wear a shirt from my college sometimes. For example, if I'm going to go traveling and I'm going to be going on a plane somewhere or something like that, I'll wear an A&M shirt because there's a good chance someone will, you know, see it and they'll talk to us or me, and they'll be like, hey, you know, you went to A&M, oh cool, and start a conversation with someone you wouldn't otherwise have. So that's one nice thing about me being willing to be a little different and share a little about yourself. And even if it is just, hey, I like blue hair, and that's and it's a good way to get people talking and, you know, probably bring a smile to some people's face, like, hey, that girl has blue hair, I dig it, I like it. So lastly, Danielle, before we sign off here, the one other thing that we haven't exactly talked about was that you've saved some text messages from high school. And I said text messages, but it's also worth pointing out that this is also a whole bunch of Facebook messages. And I know you had screenshots, and I know you also hand wrote out text messages and things like that. I believe largely from, you know, your and my time together during the courting phase, which I'm sure there's a lot of humorous things and a lot of sickly,
cringy.
sweet, cringy things. And maybe if you guys are lucky, we'll start leaking some of those out over time. But
I posted some of them to one of my earlier WordPress blogs at one point. It was like I was gonna do a recurring like weekly feature of reading Danielle's high school text messages, and then I just did the first post and never touched it again. So maybe I'll bring that back.
Well, there you go, Internet Warrior. See if you can find which of Danielle's many blogs.
You got to follow quite a few breadcrumbs to get to that one, I think.
Yes, and if you do find it, please let us know in the comments or send us contact us through our website, helpfulforlife.com. Hit the contact us button in the top right and let us know what you find and let us know what you think because that could be fun. So any thoughts on, you know, saving those things from back then, and why did you do that, and has it been worth it, and yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's very fascinating to go back and look at just like relationship milestones and like the way that we communicated and how that evolved over time, and like just the types of conversations we were having and the types of questions we were asking each other and stories we were sharing. And I guess at the time, I can't really remember exactly like why I decided to do it.
Probably because you're a hopeless romantic.
Yeah. I really just thought like, this is dialogue. It could write itself if I just record it.
That's not what you were thinking back then, though. Now it is.
For sure.
But yeah, so you did save it, and you did find it valuable, and you still look at that stuff, huh?
Yeah, I've gone back. Maybe I think it was last year. I started taking all of the handwritten text messages that I'd copied down that I only had in this one notebook, and digitizing them and typing them into the computer. So.
Gotcha. Well, you know, one of the things for me that was a good reminder, as you've showed me some of that over the years, was, man, you know, I started out like super on the far end of romantic gestures and texting and writing notes and all that type of thing, sweet nothings, if you will. And that was very strong. And now, I'm not all the way to the other end of the spectrum, but I've certainly moved that way a good bit. And so that was one thing that I am glad that you did by keeping those things and showing them to me is a good reminder. Is like, hey, this is something maybe you should do a little bit more of, and maybe you should make a little bit more romantic efforts and take me out on dates and tell me sweet nothings and write me notes.
Yeah, when my love language is words.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, that's something.
Yeah, I'm still waiting on that letter from like the challenge 20 episodes ago or whatever.
Oh, what's that? Oh, we're actually out of time. I'm so sorry, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to have to move on from that. So I'm going to give a quick recap of what we talked about today, and I want you to think about a challenge for our audience for today. And if you can't come up with something, that's fine. I've got something for them. So today we talked a little bit about journaling and what that was like for Danielle, and she likes to also call it diarizing. So we defined what that term meant. And we started with Danielle's journey and how she started out actually drawing pictures. And thanks to her Grammy, who gave her one of those classic diaries that had the little lock on it, which I'm sure would be super easy to break or pick.
Don't hold me to that.
But that's the story we're telling right now. And I hope she'll be glad to hear that. And I guess we'll find out from her later if there's any truth to that. And then we talked a little bit about the kind of metaphysical and spiritual side of things and how Danielle's journey into that, and coming from a more conservative Texas Christian upbringing, and as she's now kind of been exposed to the world a little bit more through college and travel and meeting people and things like that, how she's allowed herself to open up her mind a little bit and see what else is out there, and what parts of different religions or spiritual practices that she finds value in and thinks there's importance to. And one of the things I want to make sure to point out to you viewers at home is I would encourage you guys to do that as well. Is just because you may be a strongly devout X, that could be a Christian, could be a Muslim, could be any type of religion, right? You could be strongly devout in whatever the thing is that you are, but you can still get value out of learning a little bit more about other people's religions and spiritual practices, especially considering that some of these religions and spiritual practices have gone on for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. And so there's got to be at least a couple of nuggets of wisdom in there that you could maybe perhaps bring out. And on a previous episode, I talked about a podcast I heard with Mila Kunis when she was on Dax Shepard's Armchair Expert podcast, and how she shared about the practice of Shabbat, and how I really liked that idea and was thinking about and recommending to you guys at home to adopt some form of that within your lives. And we'll include a link to that so you guys can hear a little bit more about that. But then we wrapped up the rest of the day by talking a little bit about Danielle's hair, a little bit about the tie-in with Taylor Swift, and how the mystical thing ties into Taylor Swift, and a little bit about burning them at the stake, and then we gave a little bit of a tease for what Danielle's novel is that she's working on, and how that ties in with Taylor Swift, and a lot more. And then, of course, we mentioned you can check out more about Danielle at DanielleMGarcia.com. Danielle M as in Marie, Garcia.com. And that's also where yesterday's challenge, we had a journal challenge that is on her website. And if you go to her website, at the top, you can see Join My Free Journal Challenge. And I'll also include a link again in the chat. So, Danielle, what are your thoughts on the challenge for our listeners today?
Well, I actually had a thought earlier in the show about a challenge, and I was able to remember it. So I don't know if it would be a good one, but something to do with the root words. Maybe like, I don't know, go and look up like the 20 most common prefixes or suffixes, or I don't know, something with root words. Or maybe today, if you come across a word that you don't know, go look up and like break it apart by the root word meanings. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
something like that.
I like that, and I think we've mentioned, now that we've mentioned this a couple times in the show, I personally kind of want us to do some sort of group learning on what these STEM words are. So don't know exactly what that means yet, but yeah. So keep your ears peeled for that. But until you hear more from us on that, there's a challenge for today. So learn a little bit about these STEM words or these root words. STEM, S-T-E-M, like the stem of a plant.
or the root.
Or the root. Yeah, the stem or the root of a word.
I don't know why. Is it stem words? Why did I say root words?
I think both.
They both?
Yeah, I think they're both. And so go learn a little bit more about stems and roots of words, and you can even, as you're looking it up, be like, hey, y'all are completely wrong. Root's not right or stem's not right, but that'll get you close. And as you're looking that up, either kind of like Danielle was saying, you could see, all right, here are the top 20 most common stems or roots. And you might actually be surprised how many of these you kind of already know, because as you have a whole bunch of these words, for example, chronological, like chrono means time. And there's other, like a chronology. And like you like think about, oh, I know chronology, I know chronological, I know.
Then logy was like science. So like astrology or like any word like that, that's a science.
Yeah. So I guess my point was, as you know these words, you may be surprised how many of these root words you kind of already know. So go look up either the kind of, I guess, the most popular stems or the most popular roots words. And another thing you can do is just pick a word. You know, where maybe it's something you've heard on today's show. Maybe it's something that you read in an article today, or somebody else says to you, or maybe you just kind of go look up a random word online, or type in word of the day and see what comes up. You know, however you want to come up with a word, or maybe there's a word you've just learned about. Well, then go find out what the stems or the roots of that word are and learn what those are. So there's a couple different ways to look at it, but I think we got to the root of that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can even make up your own word.
Yeah.
Go combine some roots and let us know what you come up with.
I like it. So with that, everybody have a wonderful day. Oh, I forgot to mention, today is Wednesday, December 15th, 2021.
Just in the nick of time.
Just in the nick of time, which is hump day. So with
hump day.
We'll see you guys later, and have a wonderful hump day.
Bye.